Hey Danny,
Daniel, what's up, brother?
how are you?
Good. Okay, I'm trying to not get this light in your eyes or in your. So people are watching this. There we go. Now they're not like, what's that glow above his head?
CrossFit Jesus.
I could. Well, my beard was a little bit longer. That probably would have worked. But if I pull my hair down, it would have been. It would have maybe fit the profile very.
There you go. There's your new nickname. Just
Perfect.
don't let Michael know because he'll want it.
Yeah, but he grows a shit beard, so he just, he'll
No,
have. Else.
he'll
So,
just want the title.
oh, that's true. Yeah, that's very true.
So how have you been?
Good, man. Good. Really well. How about you?
I've been good. How's the gym going with all the COVID stuff happening?
Oh, the gym's good. I mean, I don't, I probably share a differing opinion on all of this, but it hasn't really bothered me too much. Just because I think that what's most important about the business that we're in is that we develop people and we help them find who they are. So that doesn't involve barbells from time to time, And so now, granted, people like to lift with barbells and all this other stuff, but I think we as a business have done a really good job transitioning and pivoting is not the word I would say, but we just made the shift, and the communication is pretty awesome on the team. So it's pretty seamless.
That's awesome. I like it. Yeah, I totally agree with that statement. Like, you don't need a gym to work out in. Like, you get to have a gym to work out in.
Yeah,
So, like, if you have the coaches and the staff that can like teach your community how to like live outside the gym and be able to keep their fitness and health, they're going to come back when they're allowed to.
totally. And I think people don't, I mean, we played offense, right? So we shut down early prior to being forced to close, and we just offloaded all the equipment. Like, there's not a whole lot of stuff here anymore. It's all in people's houses. And that wasn't out of a fear tactic. That was just like, movement is really, really important. And we realized that having access to equipment is one thing that we are lucky to have. So we just wanted to share that with the community. So yeah, we just made sure we could offload that stuff, and it's worked out super, super well for us. But again, now on May 22nd, it's looking like July 15th is the earliest we open. So we're continuing on this path, I guess.
Yeah, I didn't even know it got extended until last night. I heard that there was a chance of it like not till the end of June. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. That's fine.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, and like full transparency, we're running workouts in the parking lot, and we have been for a month. We have that space at Kingfield, but we are very in tune with our members and we communicate often. And so went and talked to all kinds of city and state officials multiple times, and we got the go ahead if we could be responsible, we could be outside. And
That's
so
awesome.
that's just where fitness lives right now. So currently it's like, oh, well, there's classes right there. And so, yeah, we've been, and what I've thought about a lot with this whole thing is that people pay for coaching. Coaching is the product we sell, right? But also access to other human beings.
Yeah.
So that's something that is a commodity that I think I didn't really realize. And I think people probably didn't really recognize either. But once you remove that, and they're like, oh, holy shit. So
Yeah, I've been having to go to the grocery store to get human connection.
that is awesome.
So like, because it's my wife and I and our dog, and she is a nanny, so she goes to work every day. So it's just myself and the dog at home. And I'm like, I'm gonna go grocery shopping.
That is hilarious. Yeah, I've told people, I was like, it was a nice pause for me because I have my wife, my son, and it's just chaos when they're 2.5, but chaos. And what was interesting about all that is that in my day, it was just felt like there were so many people. I had dealt with so many people that it was a nice welcome to break. I was like, oh, this isn't that bad.
This isn't bad.
No, not at all. So,
Don't
but
have to
how?
deal don't have to deal with Karen's drama or anything.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of inquiries that I deal with on a daily basis. So,
Yeah.
otherwise, you're doing well.
Yeah. Our gym unfortunately shut down permanently.
Yeah.
So Uh, I got a nice pay raise from the government.
Isn't that incredible?
I know. I was like, oh, I'm making so much more money. And it's
I
like,
mean, that's a very true statement across the board for like it. We have, I have heard many people be like, oh yeah, my job at, being a waiter or waitress or whatever, or worked at a coffee shop fell through, but all of a sudden I'm making way more money than I used to be. I'm like, well, wild.
yeah, but I mean, it's going to come to an end, which is fine because once it's over, like the people that like took the time to learn something
Yeah.
new or like actually put it to good use, like most of the money that I've made so far is just sitting in my savings account because like I don't have an excuse to go outside and spend it. There's nothing to do. So
No.
like I've
So
been diving into the podcast. I now have time to interview you, which is awesome. I did 3 of them last week in one day.
that's
So
awesome.
yeah. So now how did your journey start to like fitness coaching, owning Kingfield, all the good stuff?
All the good stuff, my journey. Well, I've always had this thing. I've always been around fitness and in the gym since I was little. I guess I've always been enamored with like working out or training. And so, but as most, I think young men my age, like there's a common story is that I just kind of like, it was like a monkey see, monkey do type deal. And
Okay.
so then that's where I found from an early age. And anybody that knows me knows that mostly the things that I cared about lifting were my arms. And
Okay.
so lots of curls and push-ups when I was younger, because I just was like, well, this is what girls like, biceps, big chest. And that's how, like, when I look at these pictures on the muscle magazines, that's what I see. So that's what I should work on. Right. So I've always had a gym membership, and just learned just throughout, like, just trying stuff. Right. And so, but I guess you always kind of think about, like, if you can listen to the voice in your head. I've always like loved coaching. So with that, I started coaching early on when I was, my early teen years. I taught swimming lessons for a number of years, just lifeguard. And then I was a firefighter through college. And then I was a training officer for 4 years there too. So I had to come up with the training and make sure that things worked out that way. And then I was a captain for 2 of those years. And so I was promoted officer, and, just really like enjoyed kind of the role of leading people. And truth be told, I just wanted to be a firefighter. That's all I wanted to do. But graduated college in 2008, and so from an economic standpoint, it was a little wild all over the place. And so most of the departments were on a hiring freeze. And so I just kind of like got a job. Worked. I went to school here in Minnesota at St. John's University. Went home for a couple months. Realized I just didn't want to live on my mom's couch because that was easy. And well, not on my mom's couch, in my mom's house, in my bedroom. I just realized I could probably fall into this trap. Like, if I stay here, I'm going to wake up and I'll be 40, that was just like terrifying to me. So I promptly moved back to Minnesota, and I lived at my sister's couch. So for like 9 months or so, I lived on a purple suede couch, and I would
Okay.
have to like rotate the cushions just because they were kind of smelly. So like one night for like a week, I'd sleep on this side of the cushion, and then I'd flip them over. And so yeah, I moved back to Minnesota with a Mazda 626, some DVDs, and clothes. And I got a job at the Calhoun Beach Club, and I was the front desk manager. And the whole time I wasn't the manager. I worked at the front desk. And the whole time I was at the front desk, I just learned like talking to people. So I think that's where I really built my rapport. So I had this love of fitness and training people and coaching. And then I had this job that put me into being like forward facing communication for many hours a day. And then one day, the woman who was the personal training manager was like, hey, you look like you know how to work out. You should do this. So then I fell into personal training, and then inevitably the story goes that you want to own your own business. Now, I had always been into CrossFit because I found CrossFit in 2005. So I've been doing CrossFit since 2005.
Okay.
And so I knew that, and this is kind of the ramp up, right? So right around 2011 is when I was like, all right, this is what I want to do. I want to open my own gym. I want to open a business. And so, you do what you do. You get a little money, you you just open a gym and you think it's just about fitness and 21-15-9. And, 9 years later, we learn that that is not the case by any stretch of the imagination. So that's kind of where my fitness and journey came from. But the business side of things, I've always been entrepreneurial. When I was like 10, I wanted a bike. So I started a snow shoveling business. And I remember just like, I sold packages of 4 shovels, buy 4, get 1 free. So it was 5 shovels. And I just bulk sold all this money to front load being able to buy this bike that was like $700. It was like $10 a shovel. So I was just going in like $40, $40, $40. Well, the 5th shovel was like, I lived in Denver. That's where I grew up. It was like 28 inches of snow. It was just like unbelievable amount. And I wasn't going to get paid for it. And I remember my dad being like, no, you sold these. This is their 5th shovel. Go out and do it. And so I just had embraced it at that point at a young age, knew that like, if I said something, I was going to do it. And so that's, I think, where I still keep that pretty simple mindset with business. So
Awesome.
that's how they converged, and that's how they have continued to be.
That's awesome. So now how'd you come up with CrossFit Kingfield, and what's the story behind that? Like all the community and everything.
Well, the name means 2,000% nothing.
Okay.
Nothing. We started the building we're in currently. We actually started across the street in 35 by 18 feet. My wife and I opened the affiliate with no equipment, just kettlebells. We rented space from a studio, and we were on this major bike path here in Minneapolis. So we were CrossFit Greenway.
Okay.
We were out on the Greenway. And then we started to outgrow that space, and we moved, I guess it would be 4 blocks south. So then we moved locations, and we were in a neighborhood. It was called Carrig. So we moved off the Greenway into a neighborhood it's called Carrig, Calhoun Area Resident Athletic Group is what that stands for. And CrossFit Carrig was like, that name sounds dumb. I'm like, Carrig, that's an ugly name. That's just what I kept telling myself. I was like, I can't get behind Carrig. But the next neighborhood over was Kingfield. So CrossFit Kingfield, we were like, let's do that. So we were CrossFit Kingfield. We were like 2 blocks away from Kingfield. And that's where we were. And we used to get chirped quite a bit because we weren't in Kingfield by some of the other gyms that have been around for longer. But I always felt like the name was something that if I didn't have like this deep emotional connection to it, it would force me to like build and create the story. Now, with that, I also didn't want to have like CrossFit hard effort and things like that, because that's also like, the premise of what we've built our business around is like responsible strength and conditioning classes. That's what I always felt like. I appreciate the autonomy that CrossFit gives me, because I get to interpret the methodology how I see fit and then create a product that is in line with our core values for training and a business and all that. So Kingfield, it didn't really matter that it meant nothing. Now the tagline, "No Crowns, Just Courage," was not mine. It's original to a good friend of mine, Sean O'Brien. And he does some incredible work in the marketing world. And he had asked me, what do I say to somebody that's on the street? And I just offhand said, all I need people to do is have the courage to step foot in the door, and then I can do the rest. So Sean came up with "No Crowns, Just Courage." And that was a really great launching point. I think that was like mid 2014, because we had then moved back coincidentally to the Greenway, into our, 3rd location. And that's where that started to grow. So I think from us, the community's had some turnover. It's had some iterations, right? Like we've had different people, you see demographics come and go, but we've always stood behind that idea of like, no one's more important than anybody else. We don't record whiteboard scores. I don't give a shit about that. Like, it's about, really now, 9 years later, I can tell you in a very succinct way that, I'm a teacher and I'm a communicator, and that I choose to use movement as a way that I communicate with people. And the barbell is a tool in which we embrace because it's hard and it's going to teach you something. And so therefore, we really kind of make our stand on the fact that, when people come here, they might think it's about snatch, clean, and jerk. They might think it's about CrossFit, but just spend enough time here and you'll see that the messaging and the culture is about something else. It's really about starting to tap into that conversation you have with yourself, because the way you speak to yourself is largely how you communicate with the rest of the world. And I find that that's probably the most important starting point. in anything that you want to do is, have awareness around that internal dialogue, because it makes things a lot more possible. So there's the 9-year through line for you.
I love it. I love it. I think that's super cool. And I know a lot of people like will resonate with that. And for the people that don't, maybe they'll just look back at what they've been doing and be like, oh, okay, maybe it's time to like change my perspective, right? Like growing up, who inspired you? Or if no one did then, who inspires you now to like keep this up?
Well, that's a great question. Well, so growing up, I always wanted to be a firefighter. And so I think that I really enjoyed the machismo of all of that, right? The like heroic nature. And that's probably largely built around the fact, like, I didn't have a ton of friends growing up. I had friends, right? But there's always kind of been this outlier in me where like, I just blaze my own trail. And at some point in time, I had just realized that, people treated me a certain way and I didn't appreciate that. And so therefore I was just going to, continue to like keep things close and then do it myself. And I felt like, I didn't necessarily always kind of follow a certain crowd. And I think at one point in time, my mom had said something to me like, people are intimidated by you because you're just so resolute in what you believe. And then you should just learn to follow that. Now, that manifests itself in very young and immature, stubborn behaviors when you're a kid, right? Which then evolves into this like massive fucking ego, a teen into early adulthood. So I have this theory that all men have this journey, and I can obviously only speak from my experience. So when I say all men, yes, I generalize, but I'm sure that many can relate that we get to this point where as we start to accomplish and we start to grow up and see like this obviously physiologically goes right along with testosterone, but as we start to grow and become confident, our ego just explodes. And then we have this thing where we're just like, God, if I only had so much time, like I'm literally the coolest person on the planet. And you believe your own story, right? So you just tell this story. And at some point in time, life will humble you and other men will humble you so that you then learn like, oh, fuck, like I don't know that much. Or maybe I could think about different perspectives and things like that. And then men have the responsibility to teach other men how to be men. And so I don't know why I was thinking about this morning, but like, in order for me to really like lend credibility to people, I have to have a tremendous amount of respect for them and what they do. I look at things, I look for consistency. So I appreciate my dad a lot. He would have honest conversations with me when I was a kid. He didn't, he let me be myself. But he also held me accountable. I appreciate my mom quite a bit too. Her and I are one and the same. So those are big influences. I had a close friend of mine that still to this day is like my brother, my cousin. So probably families who I really looked up to at that point when I was younger. And then now I would tell you, I have a couple close people I look up to. I mean, some people I coach, I really look up to. Sean, who's a good friend of mine, I look up to quite a bit and bounce things off of him. He's a good moral compass. Rob Wilson, who I've taught breathing with for a number of years, I think is one of the most talented communicators and thinkers that I've ever been around. And I really, really appreciate that. And he holds me, he understands me pretty well in terms of how my mind works, but also holds me accountable, which I have found very, very beneficial. I would say my wife is probably my greatest teacher, right? My wife, she's no bullshit. She keeps me pretty sane. And then my son, like you look at your son, when you have kids, if you've ever had, those who've had kids ever had this experience, they just mirror your energy, right? And so if I'm amped, I can just tell. I'm like, why is he being so fucking crazy? But then I've been able to take a step out and be like, oh, okay, like here's what my energy is. This is kind of the vibe I'm putting off. And he's just riding that whole thing. So he's a great teacher for me in many, many ways, patience, communication. So those are probably my greatest influences right now. And two, like, again, I think I am just really working on who and what I want to become in terms of a man. And I would tell you that I don't have all the answers for that question, but that's okay. I'm totally comfortable with that.
Yeah, so. That's totally fine. You got like, 60 more years or more of life left. So
Figure it out, right?
like plenty of time to learn that stuff.
Totally, totally.
So you brought up a good topic, which is breathing, right? And I know you teach it all over the country, and you taught me a lot about it last August at athlete camp. How did you get into that? Because I know you worked with Brian McKenzie, who used to do CrossFit Endurance and such. Like how'd you find that place to go?
Sure. Um, so I found breath work because this was maybe back in 2015, I had a pretty serious injury, which put a pause on training. So like I had a really, really bad concussion, and I've had a history with some pretty serious close head injuries. And so I had to take a time away from a lot of physical exertion. And so stumbled upon breath work. And so I found Wim Hof, and then Wim Hof had the Wim Hof method. And it's more of just this hyperventilation breathing where you breathe in a rapid succession, and you can create some pretty strong physiological responses. And so, I'm very inquisitive for sure, but I'm also a thinker. Like I can't not think. That's just how my mind works. And so with that, I hold myself to pretty high standards, and I, pursue those is with everything I have, and so like I get very frustrated with myself if I don't perform. And so at this time in my life, when I found that I couldn't train, which I thought was an outlet, I moved into breath work. And so I did this Wim Hof course and had really started to be inquisitive about breath work. And so it's really powerful. And I was like, oh my God, this is great. And so like I had this just this little bit of knowledge about it, right? Small experience, which was mine, individual. And I've known of Brian McKenzie for many, many years through CrossFit Endurance. And then I saw he was starting to talk about breath work. And so I kind of just watched this whole story or watched what he was doing. And then he ended up having a breathwork shop or a course in Minneapolis or in St. Paul. So I signed up for it, and I got to meet Brian. And I'm pretty persistent and pretty outgoing. And I really believe that in this world that there isn't a large amount of luck. You have to make your own luck. Right. So don't be afraid to reach out to people, shake their hands, try to ask how you can get involved. And so that's what I did with Brian was I met Brian, made sure that, I could talk to him for a little while, and then connected. And I sent him an email and said, thank you. And, and just said, hey, keep in touch. And so we did. And from time to time, I'd be like, hey, I did this, just letting you know. And I would send those messages about my experience, not hoping that I would get a response, but just to keep him in the know, and let him share. Because I think that, my mom was a public school teacher for 38 years. And she used to tell me that teachers don't necessarily get to see the results of their work inside the classroom, because most of the time, the stuff that kids they're taught in the classroom, it manifests itself later outside. And so I was always if I'm a teacher, I want to know what people do with this shit. I want to know what this does. And so that's why I would share. And then, Brian and I just continue to stay in contact. And I hosted the first Art of Breath seminar. And then when Rob and Brian had created the course, and then they asked me if I wanted to intern. So I interned for a number of years, and inevitably started teaching the course and things like that. And so Brian was a pretty impressionable figure for a long time with me. And I think the things that I can say that Brian taught me unequivocally was that in the world of high performance, and in the world of if you want to put yourself on a platform, right, you want to portray yourself or claim the role of something, right? So you want to be I'm a specialist, or I am a subject matter expert in whatever it is. No one gives a shit, actually. You just need to go there and perform and execute or leave, because people will see right through you if you are not authentic, if you're trying to position yourself as something that you're not, and that if you deserve to be there, you'll be there. And so, believe me, teaching breathing is very esoteric and very individualized, and it took a very long time for me to craft my narrative. And so I had some hard gets, and Brian is not a handholder, which was totally fine. But I respect Brian for the way he like for the way he observes things, right? And so he's been great. And again, he's had a tremendous impact on my life as well. So I'm grateful for that. But I actually have a deeper relationship with Rob because I was on the road with Rob for a number of years. And so I think, I never set out to be like known as anything. I just wanted to continue to grow my craft as a coach, and breathing was something that was very powerful for me, and I wanted to share that. And so I saw that the ability to teach was only going to help develop me as a communicator and expose me to more people. And I would just get reps. I'd get reps talking about this thing that we all do all the time, which people take for granted. Maybe they understand, maybe they don't, but inevitably is still is hard for people to conceptualize unless they buy in. So yeah, that's kind of how that all started. And that's been a number of years. And so now with COVID-19, there are no more Art of Breath seminars on the docket. So.
Yeah, I think like there's a lot of stuff that isn't on the docket that people should really like push for getting back out there again. Like I did my level 2 at the end of February, beginning of March. That's like one of the last ones they offered. And like now they're doing the level 1s online, like study at your own pace. And it's just like, we need this all to go away so people could go like take seminars again and learn something.
Yeah, the seminars are interesting. I mean, so this Art of Breath seminar has been 4 years, and the evolution of it's great. But you will find that the popularity of the seminar is intrinsically tied to social media and marketing, and something like breath work is not crazy sexy, and but it is so impactful. And I think that 4 years, which was really interesting, was that it gave us a ton of time to reflect, to learn deeper, to modify the narrative, to learn how to communicate those things. And so what Brian and Rob taught here in Minneapolis the first time to what the last seminar, which was in like Austin, Texas, they're completely different seminars. But information is still, like I say, all of human information or human knowledge is available on the internet. If you can dig deep enough, you can find it. I think what people didn't realize, and maybe they realize now, is that the seminar, they're not paying for information, they're paying for the person who communicates it so that they can disseminate it and make it relatable. Because if I'm going to talk to you about breathing, the first thing I have to do is not use words like hemoglobin or the Bohr effect, or say things like sympathetic or parasympathetic. Like, you might know what those things are, you might not. But what I need to do is I need to make that relatable, so that I need to tell a story that's going to get you to be able to be like, oh, I've had that experience. And then it needs to mean something, because then that message, like that curiosity, perpetuates interest, so that therefore you're willing to follow that. And then along the way, you can digest higher level information and then be like, oh, when I hold my breath after, 40 superventilation breaths, and then I feel really lightheaded and tingly, why does this happen? Okay, well, this is why this happens. So yeah, we used to think that people really I used to be up there thinking I just needed to recite information, which is a really poor way of positioning yourself. Rather, as you grow in your coaching journey and narrative, you realize that you're there to authentically relay and tell a story, and then help other people be able to conceptualize why this matters and why this applies to what they want to do. And then wait for those like 2-foot conversations. That's what I call them. That's really where I think the relationships build is you give enough, you speak to a group of people universally, and then you just wait for those like one-on-one conversations, like, hey, I got this going on. And then it makes sense, then you find out really why they're there. So that was kind of a ramble, but
that's totally awesome. No, I like your point of view. It definitely makes me rethink what I said. Like, the main reason I like to go to seminars is I like hanging out with people, especially people that are like there for the same reason, like to learn something or just to like hone their craft a little bit.
Yeah.
That's why I'm stoked for these things to start happening again.
Sure, to be around people, right?
Yeah, around people. It'd be nice, not just talking to the person that's like checking me out at the grocery store.
I know, behind plexiglass and a mask.
Behind plexiglass. Like one girl got yelled at because she took her mask off to talk to me.
Yeah.
And like, I was like, I didn't say to like, all I said was hi. And then like just mask off conversation. And it was like, all right, cool.
I know. It's, yeah, right now is a very interesting time. We'll look back on this and I think I'm sure all of the things we're supposed to learn haven't really sunk in, but there'll be some things we think about or recognize later.
Yeah, for sure. Now, who helped you find your work ethic throughout life? Because obviously you had all the passion in the world to do this, but who helped you like find that work ethic that makes you be so good at what you do?
Oh, work ethic. I don't know, man. I think that some of it, I've had this question of like, where does it come from? I don't really know. I really hate losing. Um, really hate losing. I don't actually really care about winning either, but I just don't want to lose. But I think I've always had a deep-seated belief in myself. And so like, I appreciate as an adult, I can look back and say, I appreciate, um, the moments where I doubt myself. I can appreciate the conversations I have because I'm very in tune with that dialogue. Having said that, probably the easiest way is just like anger and discipline, because I would just get in trouble all the time and I'd get punished. And so if I got punished and I had to do something as a result of that punishment, I wanted to prove my mom or dad wrong and do that shit fast. And just like, like I got in trouble all the time. So I'm like, fuck that. And so, yeah, I don't know, but I've always had a really strong work ethic. I mean, I have, if I got to get something done, I'm going to get it done. And so, and as now as I'm an adult, I don't find motivation to be at all something that I look for. I'm a momentum based person. So like, I just look for the things that will keep momentum going. And I think that that's really what work ethic is about in the long run from a sustainable level is like, can you create momentum so that it can stay forward and you don't be stagnant? I mean, that as long as you don't stop, you will be fine.
Yeah. And what's going on right now should be giving people a bunch of like momentum in like, from my point of view, I think people should have like nothing but momentum and motivation to like go do something that they've always wanted to do. Especially like if you're unemployed and you're getting a bigger paycheck, you have all those extra hours during the day to like go do something else.
Yeah,
Right.
totally. Yeah. I think in two, this pause has given everybody a really, really, if you chose to embrace it, right? So I think that everything is a choice. If you chose to look at your life objectively, you would understand, you would see some things would be like really, really apparent. Like, oh, I see that, I see this, like whatever the case may be. If you chose to complain about it and, become a victim to the circumstance or the situation, well, then I feel sorry for you because you're going to be in the same position as you were before this started. And guess what? This time only highlights who people were, like more of who they were before it started. Right. So like if you're a fearful person, you're more fearful now. If you were a hard worker, you work even harder. If you were gracious, you're even more gracious. And so like, those are the things that I think are really important to recognize about adversity is like, this just shows everybody who they are. Like this just shows teams, this exposed businesses, this exposed individuals, this exposed mindsets. Like this just kind of opened up everything. So you got to see who people were. And then with that, it's pretty, I think it's just honest. And I think that's great. So I don't think this has been a bad thing necessarily at all.
No, I don't either. Like this might sound super blunt and straightforward, but in my opinion, like if you didn't come out of this like with a new skill or new hobby, you failed. Like, right? Like not to be a dick, but
Yeah, okay, it's okay.
like, like, hey, go do something. Like, oh, I've always wanted to do this. All right, cool. You have so much
Well,
time. Go do it.
the only caveat I would say to that is that if for those people who have children,
Oh, yeah.
which I have a son and there's no longer daycare, I would say that it is damn near impossible to get anything done. So I wholeheartedly subscribe to that. But if I didn't have a wife who just like held it down, holy shit, man. Like with kids, you have to, one of my good friends, Marcus, said this. He's like, you have to embrace that you're going to work at 60%, you're going to parent at 60%, you're going to train at 60%. And that is the only thing you're capable of. Unless you want to stick your kid in front of PBS all day long and then just hope, like do that, but their brains are melting. Yes. So with children, it's been fucking almost impossible.
Okay.
So
Good to know.
Kids, you're good to go, man. You got all the time in the world. If you have children, I applaud you more than ever. So
yeah, I'll take that into consideration. We're definitely not having kids now.
Take that for what's worth, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, our new dog has thankfully gotten me out of the house to go on like walks more often now. Cause like when I was coaching 5 classes a day, like I put my phone in my pocket once just to see how like many steps I took during a class. And it was a mile. And I was like, oh, I'm walking 5 miles a day, like plus working out. Like all right. And now I'm at home. I'm just like, all right, we got a dog. Let's go.
That's awesome.
Let's go for steps.
Yeah, that's perfect.
So what lessons have you taken away from your journey so far that you would love to like convey to the coaches that are coming up or are going to be coming up that will like hear this in the future, like when we're older and like just sitting there watching our grandkids?
So I guess if we look from, I hear that question in twofold, like learn from my journey, I guess, let's say from a business standpoint, and I would hear this often and you kind of disregard this until it becomes what you really have to embrace. But I think that process and procedures is really important, organization. And then the greatest thing you can invest in is a team, you know? And so like making sure that you have the people, you surround yourself with great people who are willing to focus and move forward, you know, who share similar values and goals is really, really important. And if you are the person who is in charge, your job is to support them and provide. Like businesses don't thrive when one person makes money and the other people make just kind of a little bit. Like that doesn't work. So you have to take that into consideration wholeheartedly and make sure that it's how things go. So I would say from the gym owner standpoint, from the business owner standpoint, that that's kind of the first place. That's the first starting point. Is like I had somebody, a high school kid, ask me. It was like, in one sentence, can you tell me what owning a gym is like? And I wrote, investing in depreciating assets. And they were
Awesome.
like, what does that mean? And I was like, you'll have to look it up. Because I mean, that's like one perspective, you know, like as soon as I open it, the value continually drops. But sometimes I think people, they confuse passion with hard work, and you can be really passionate and not be a hard worker. Like those are not some symbiotic things. Those are two completely different things. Working hard means what you say, you follow through on, you know, you're consistent. And when you make a mistake, you own up to it and you accept responsibility. Or if anything is short of what you thought. So I would say that. But if I'm looking at, if I'm looking at like my life journey up until this point, you know, I would say to the new and up and coming business owners or kids or my son or whatever, I think you have to, I've said this often, but if you want to be recognized for being remarkable or recognized for something, you kind of have to be remarkable or be something first. And I think we live in a culture in which people want the recognition first, and then they work on trying to be remarkable second. And that if you just put your head down, you just find what you want to do, and you just are consistent with that, more than likely you're going to turn out and be great. You know, because success in life is about reps. No one was born just like, oh my God, I'm an incredible business owner, this, that, the other. Like people have certain things they put in place. You know, they live their life a certain way, and that's what makes them successful. So however, if you know, and I think the last part is just believe in yourself. And I think that is something that probably, especially in the society that we live in right now, people are heavily influenced by others, and that they're looking for hacks, or they're looking for, how can I do this or how can I do that? And like, that isn't the case. You know, it's like you can get advice from people, and then you have to be able to sit with that. And then you need to be able to apply that to your circumstance the best way you can and go from there. So I don't know. And if like transparency and honesty are probably pretty important. So from a life standpoint, if you can move towards those things, you probably will be pretty satisfied. Maybe not happy, but satisfied.
I like it. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Now, what books would you recommend for people to read or listen to? Because I guess Audible is becoming very popular.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's for what you are drawn to. Let's see. I mean, probably one of my favorite books of all time is from John Krakauer, Where Men Win Glory. So it's the Pat Tillman story. Was really, really great. If you're looking for like a fourth grade novel, which is like a coming of age story, Harris and Me by Gary Paulson. That one speaks deeply to my soul on many, many levels, about mischief and other things. It's about this thick too, with words about that big. So it'd be just fine. What am I currently reading right now? I've come to realize that like I don't have to finish books all the way. Like I used to think I had to like read books all the way through, and I don't think that's necessarily the case. There's so many that come to mind right now. So I'm finishing Adam Grant's Originals, which was great. He wrote that a number of years ago, but that's awesome for marketing stuff. Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance is a really great one if you're looking for kind of some introspection and you're willing to take some time with starting to look at yourself through the metaphor of working on motorcycles. Zen and the Art of Archery is also really, really great. That one will be very, very contemplative. So I don't know. Those are kind of the things I would recommend people start with. And then Checklist Manifesto is like awesome if you're in any type of organizational process, because you'll realize that like people set out with really good checklists, but the efficacy of that checklist comes down to like, can you concisely get your points across in like 6 steps? Because after that, it doesn't fucking work. So that one is really, really helpful. Checklist Manifesto, great. Yeah, I think those are Shoe Dog by Phil Knight, or the Phil Knight documentary is not by Phil Knight, but Shoe Dog, the Phil Knight story was really great if you want to learn just about like Nike's story and where they came from. And I appreciate that on a number of levels, just from like where business was in 1970. It's completely different. It's totally changed. So,
Yeah.
And which I think is awesome. But other than that, I mean, those are like, I rambled off on a few from different places, but I'd start with those.
That's totally okay. And where can people find you, Danny?
Yeah, I mean, they can find me. My gym is at, CrossFit Kingfield here in Minneapolis. So most likely there at CrossFitKingfield.com, or just at CrossFit Kingfield for our Instagram handle. And then if they just mostly want to see pictures of my wife, my son, maybe some training stuff, but mostly just my wife and my son, at DS Yeager 7. But I kind of everything just kind of runs under the business stuff.
Okay.
They just come visit us. So
awesome. Well, thanks, Danny.
All right, Dano, I appreciate it, brother. Nice talking with you.
Anytime.
Cool. Have a good day.
You too.